Thank you very much. Thank you to the congressman and the organizers for inviting us today. Today I'm going to share with you more than 30 years or 3 decades of work that we've been doing at Mathematica to evaluate the school meals programs. So I'm not looking at this from an audit or a compliance standpoint, but more a program evaluation and evaluation of policies in the school meals area. So I'm going to briefly share with you the CINDA studies. How many of you are familiar with the school nutrition dietary assessment studies? Yes. So I'm going to talk about 3 specific things, the most recent in the school nutrition CINDA studies, and then a new study which you may or may not have heard about, the Q study on kitchen infrastructure and training for schools, and then the next CINDA, or CINDA 5, which will be out in the field in the new school year. Just a very brief history to underscore the importance of long-term program monitoring and evaluation work for school nutrition. There have been 3 decades of school nutrition work, starting with CINDA 1, conducted in 1993, that really was the first national study to show that school meals were very high in total fat and saturated fat, well above the dietary guidelines. And this really fueled the debate for improving school meals nutritional quality and led to new policies known as the School Meals Initiative for Healthy Children, or the SMI standards. CINDA 2 was very early in the implementation of those new standards, and we saw that schools had reduced fat and saturated fat in their meals, but they were still far away from meeting the SMI standards. CINDA 3 was a really critical study. Not only did it look at school meals and what was offered, but also what students' dietary intakes were at school and over the course of the day at home. It also looked at food security and weight status of children and served as a main source of information for the Institute of Medicine's report on recommended changes to the school meals program. And then CINDA 4, the most recently completed study, is the last big study, big national study that will be done before the new recommendations have been implemented. And CINDA 4 looks at not only the nutritional quality of school meals, but also a lot more attention was put on the school food environment, competitive foods, the physical activity environment, all the important factors that Dr. Giles mentioned. CINDA 4, a very large, nationally representative study of all public schools that are participating in the National School Lunch Program. Almost 600 school food authorities participated. School food authorities are the administrative responsible body at the school district level. They're responsible for implementing school food requirements and regulations in their schools. And almost 900 schools participated. And this was done in early 2010. And the key outcomes you'll see here: calorie and nutrient content of the meals, school lunch in particular, contribution of school lunches, and then looking at the food and physical activity environment. So this is one of the main findings related to how well did school lunches that are served meet the SMI, the School Meals Initiative standards for calories and nutrients. And you can see that this is prior to the new requirements, that most schools are in fact meeting protein, vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron standards. So schools are doing a good job in providing the nutrients that children need within the calories. Calories here are a little bit lower, but I don't think at this point we're concerned about children having enough calories to consume across the day. We're really concerned about the right mix and the nutritional quality of what they're consuming. And one of the new meal standards is that there is more flexibility for schools to provide a range of calories. So for example, you don't really want a kindergartner to be having the same calories as a 5th grader. So the ranges that Dr. Giles mentioned provide schools with more flexibility and changing the portion sizes that children in, for example, elementary school might have, while still meeting requirements for nutrients. This slide, if you focus on the right-hand picture, is a comparison of the proportion of schools that met the requirement for saturated fat. in CINDA 3, which is the blue bar, and then CINDA 4, which is the red bar. And you can see considerable improvement in the percent of schools that are meeting those standards, but still a long ways to go. 53% in elementary school, 46% in secondary schools. So we have a long ways to go to still meet the average across the schools requirement for saturated fat. Just if you look at the bottom bullet, also two of the other important nutrients that are problematic, which Dr. Giles also mentioned and I'm reinforcing, is that schools served average lunches that did not meet the standards for dietary fiber, which you would get primarily from fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and did not meet the requirements for sodium. Turning now to foods, which, nutrients are important and there are nutrient requirements for calories and nutrients, but we're really interested in what are the foods that children are being served and what are they eating. And one of the nice recommendations in the Institute of Medicine and in the meal requirements is a move to meal-based or food-based menu planning. So focusing on target nutrients, but really focusing primarily on the foods. And this shows offer versus served. Have any of you heard of that, offer versus served? So the primary difference is that in the past, children were offered a number of items and actually could refuse to not have the fruit or the vegetable. That's been changed. Children can no longer refuse both a fruit and a vegetable. They must pick a fruit or a vegetable at lunch. And you'll see that the items that children tend not to select at the level at which they're offered are vegetables. No surprise, perhaps. Fruit, although fruit is popular among children, 50% offered versus 32% take up. And then whole grains, very, very low, at about 10% of the average. So this is an average for elementary school pictures. 33% is the target that a school lunch should provide about 33% or 1/3 of the day's requirements. Now, if we look at one area where schools are exceeding, and not in a good way, 100%, over 100% of the calories from solid fats and added sugars coming just from school lunch. So this is kind of the background national data before the new meals go into effect. And I think they are really indicative of why the Institute of Medicine focused appropriately on vegetables, fruits, and whole grains, and reducing calories from saturated fats, solid fats, and added sugars. So I'm going to switch gears. That was our 5 minutes on CINDA. We have 5 minutes to talk about a new study that Mathematica did with the P.H Charitable Trust. This is called the KIT, so the Kitchen Infrastructure. This is the first national study that really took a hard look at kitchen facilities in schools, what were some of the issues surrounding how easy school kitchens were going to have in terms of implementing the new meal requirements, looking at staffing needs, looking at barriers, looking at equipment needs. This information was collected August through December of 2012, which was about the time that schools were just starting to make the changes to meet the new meal requirements. These were the top 5 infrastructure needs in school kitchens. More than half, 55% of schools reported having one or more of these problems in terms of implementing the new meal requirements. Leading the way was more physical space, 46% more electrical, more plumbing, more ventilation, or bringing the facility up to code. So this is like we talk about the highways and the metro and the changes needed to maintain the infrastructure. Many schools have aging kitchens, do not have the space or the wherewithal to necessarily efficiently make these changes. However, 80% of schools were saying they did intend to meet the school meal, the new requirements, but they were doing a lot of it or planned to do a lot of it with a lot of workaround kinds of things. So for example, they could be manually cutting up fruits and vegetables instead of having equipment that could help them, storing the fruits and vegetables off-site and transporting them to school daily, doing all sorts of things to make the system work. But these are not ways that are cost-effective nor really sustainable long-term. So this shows you the percent of schools that said they needed these kinds of equipments. 43% carts, utility carts, 41% needing $32 portion size, portion serving utensils. So this would be like what you might have in your kitchen at home. Not enough very simple, even portion utensils. Boards, cutting boards, food processors, scales. And over on the right-hand column, in addition to the estimated cost of one of those, is the number of school food authorities affected. So 5,000 to 6,000 schools needing these kinds of equipment. And on top of that, only about 42% of school food authorities had a budget that they can purchase kitchen equipment. This is a really big area for the future in terms of financing changes that might be needed within school kitchens. Some of the common barriers, this is kind of a summary of the main findings, of which there are 3 or 4 reports up on the Pew site and up on the Mathematica site. Common barriers to meeting the new lunch requirements are the cost and availability of appropriate foods, particularly concern about the cost of fresh fruits and vegetables, fresh produce, staff training on anything from the meal requirements, what they are, staff training on simple cooking and methods of preparation of fruits and vegetables and other foods, menu planning, basic nutrition. And overall, this last bullet, really critical. If you look at the total national cost of equipment needs, $5.3 billion is estimated at $122,000 per school food authority or school district. I know a number of schools are trying to work with local partners or local funding or finding unique ways for financing some of the changes that are needed in their locations. Finally, just forthcoming research, the CINDA-5, which is actually now called the School Nutrition and Meal Cost Study, is actually started and will be in the field in this next school year, 2014-2015. Results will not be available before the end of, data collection will continue through 2015. So the early results will probably be late 2015, early 2016. But this study is really, really important because not only does it combine the components from the past, it will look at school meals operations, it will look at student dietary intakes, but also has a very in-depth cost study. So it's the first time we're really integrating school meals cost, quality, nutritional quality, and student intake and satisfaction and participation in school meals. So really we'll be able to answer the question, do healthy meals cost more? And what's the overall take-up rate and participation of students? This study, as with the other CINDA studies, is funded by the Department of Agriculture. And then just finally, more information. I'm happy to direct you to reports or share with you other information. They're available on our website shown here. Thank you.